Now, UK. دولة قطر أنها لن تتهاون على فيما يتعلق بالمساس بسيادتها وسلامة أراضيها، بأن الناس تتعامل بحزم مع أي اختراق متهور أو اعتداء يطال أمنها ويهدد استقرار المنطقة، بأنها تحتفظ بحق الرد على هذا الهجوم السافر، وسوف تقوم باتخاذ كافة الإجراءات اللازمة.
Saudi Arabia has signed a mutual defense pact with nuclear-armed Pakistan, and this is coming after Israel launched its surprise attack on Qatar, targeting Hamas leaders there. Now, Gulf Arab countries as a whole are trying to reconsider their own security, especially after this Israeli attack. Israel is long suspected to be the Middle East's only nuclear-armed state. So having Pakistan and Saudi Arabia reach this defense pact in which if one country is attacked, both countries are attacked, represents a significant move to try to counteract that. And Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have a decades-old military-to-military relationship, and Saudi Arabia was the main financial backer of Pakistan. While Islamabad was seeking a nuclear weapon, it faced a lot of American sanctions over that pursuit. As of right now, Pakistan is believed to have some 170 nuclear warheads. They use it as a deterrence against neighboring India, which they've fought multiple wars and skirmishes with over recent decades. So moving forward, this move likely will put Riyadh under Islamabad's nuclear umbrella, and that will bring new complications to the Middle East and possibly deter Israel as it continues its war in Gaza.
Another Russian military provocation sends NATO jets scrambling, and top-ranking officials are vowing to beef up security along the Russian border as a result. Fox's Jonathan Hunt has more tonight from London.
NATO scrambled jets once again to deal with another Russian provocation. This time it was in Estonia. 3 Russian MiG-31 fighters crossed the border and violated Estonian airspace for at least 12 minutes on Friday. Italian F-35 jets responded and the Russians flew back over their border.
Putin attacked NATO, and this is a fact, so we need to face that. So I do hope that President Trump as well understands that.
The incident came just over a week after NATO planes shot down Russian drones over Poland, and Romania reported an airspace violation by Russian MiGs. European allies now standing behind Estonia.
These are not the actions of someone who wants peace.
We need to keep strengthening the whole of EU's eastern border.
A big part of that is a new NATO operation aimed at stopping the Russians from crossing the border again.
NATO launched Eastern Sentry, a multi-domain activity designed to strengthen our eastern flank.
Meanwhile, as the fighting grinds on, President Trump is still pushing an economic solution, telling world leaders to stop buying Russian oil, claiming it's the fastest way to end the war.
If the price of oil comes down, Putin's going to drop out. He's going to have no choice. He's going to drop out of that war.
Estonia and the other Baltic states are seen as the most likely targets if President Putin decides to expand the war into NATO countries. In London, Jonathan Hunt, Fox 4 News.
Donald Trump has warned of big trouble after Russian military jets entered Estonian airspace. Moscow has been accused of provocation as it once again breaches the borders of a NATO nation.
Russian jets putting NATO on alert, fleeing over the Baltic Sea after an incursion into Estonia.
I don't love it. I don't love it when that happens. It could be big trouble.
The MiG fighter jet spent 12 minutes in Estonian airspace. Italy, Finland and Sweden all scrambling jets to intercept them.
It was a very clear provocation. It was definitely meant like this.
In the past fortnight, Russian drones have breached the borders of 2 other NATO members, Romania and Poland.
Again and again, President Putin has escalated.
So now, cutting the Kremlin's cash is high priority. Europe announcing a ban on Russian oil. Donald Trump wants nations to sanction Moscow's biggest client, China, today dialing in with President Xi Jinping.
It was great. I had a great call with President Xi.
The war in Ukraine and the sale of TikTok among the talking points.
The TikTok deal is well on its way, as you know, and the investors are getting ready.
While the president sells entry to the US.
So this executive order is entitled the Gold Card.
Under the relaunched program, permanent resident status will cost $1.5 million.
I'm going to make America great again. That's what we're doing. We're making America great again. Thank you very much, everybody.
In the United States, Jonathan Kersley, 9 News.
It's the latest in a series of major drone and missile attacks from Russia, this time hitting the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro. In the capital of Kyiv, Russian drones hit this apartment building. An experienced resident, Yulia Kristokletova, has already gone through. This is the second time my house has been hit. The first time was a rocket, this time a drone. My child couldn't sleep for 6 months after that. It caused me huge problems. I'm still shaking now and can't calm down. Russia fired 40 missiles and roughly 580 drones at Ukraine, killing at least 3 and injuring dozens, according to the Ukrainian president. As Moscow ramps up their war in Ukraine, drones and aircraft have repeatedly entered NATO country airspace. The latest, Estonia.
We can say that at least some of the flight path was intentional, and they must have known that they were in Estonian airspace.
Russia has denied the claim, but the Swedish military posted this photo of the Russian MiG-31 after it left Estonian airspace.
This was a very serious violation of the NATO airspace. We are talking about 12 minutes of violation.
There have been multiple Russian drone and aircraft incursions into NATO airspace recently, leading France to station jets in Poland. We just had 19 Russian drones enter their airspace last week.
We are ready 24/7 to take off on demand. The demand comes from the chain of command of the NATO, and we are able, when necessary, to take off and be ready for any mission.
Russia's testing of NATO boundaries has European leaders on edge, but Donald Trump seems to be less concerned.
I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't like it when that happens. Could be big trouble, but I'll let you know later.
Trump is expected to meet with Vladimir Zelensky next week at the United Nations General Assembly, and the Prime Minister will as well. With a senior government official telling Global News, Mark Carney and Zelensky will co-host a meeting on Russia kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children, and an issue Canada believes progress can be made on thanks to Melania Trump, who's shown interest after writing a letter to Vladimir Putin on the issue.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you.
New tonight, Poland and NATO scrambling military jets as Russia launches a massive assault on Ukraine from the air. The Russian strikes hit several locations across Ukraine, including close to Poland's border. Just a day earlier, NATO intercepted 3 Russian fighter jets that flew into Estonia's airspace for 12 minutes. That's according to that country's foreign ministry. Let's get some analysis now from CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. He's also a partner at the investment firm, the Carlyle Group. Admiral, always great to see you. The Estonian Prime Minister says his country has requested NATO Article 4 consultations after he described this violation as totally unacceptable. We'd seen an Article 4 just a week or so ago after some drones flew into Polish airspace, and intelligence officials are still trying to determine whether the Kremlin sent those intentionally or not. What would these Article 4 consultations, you think, entail?
First and foremost, it's a total of 19 drones that flew into Poland. Seems highly unlikely to me that's accidental. And certainly manned aircraft breaking NATO borders, as you just reported, is hard to see as anything other than intentional. And I think there are reports also, Boris, of drones, Russian drones over Romania. So that's 3 examples in the last 5 days. The Article 4 consultations will set up NATO's response to these continuing incursions, and it should. Look, Putin is doing 3 things. He's trying to test the air defenses tactically, see how capable NATO is of responding. Number 2, he's trying to get NATO to say, well, maybe we shouldn't send all that air defense equipment to Ukraine because we got Russia banging on our door. And thirdly, he's trying to create some divisions in the alliance as nations will have different reactions and different levels of response. Generally, the further east you go, the closer you are to Russia, the more likely you are to want those Article 4 consultations to say, let's put up a pretty stern response to Russia that goes beyond just a memo. Let's get some jets in the air and get ready for action.
You wrote in a piece, an op-ed piece for Bloomberg this week, that these brazen incursions demand a NATO response in the skies. What are you hoping to see?
Number 1, the alliance increase its air defense posture. They're doing that. It's going to be called Operation Eastern Sentry. Number 2, get our air defenses up along NATO borders and in NATO capitals, but also continue to strengthen the Ukrainians. And third, tell Russia the next time one of your jets or drones fly over NATO airspace, we're going to shoot it down. I think this demands a kinetic response. I recognize that has the risk of escalation, but we need to remember who the aggressor is here. It's Moscow, not Brussels.
I also wonder what happens if we don't see that kind of response, and we continue sort of plodding along as we have for not just weeks, but months. I mean, there was talk that there would be a bilateral meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, and that has not yet come to fruition. But now for months, there's been this promise from the White House that there would be some more forceful response, and we just haven't seen it. So what happens with that one?
We have got to see Washington link its arms with Brussels and do two big things, Boris. One is give the Ukrainians more offensive weapons capability so they can use it, not to go after Russian civilian targets, but rather go after the drone production facilities in Russia. Those are known targets, and we ought to help the Ukrainians go after them. And number two, even more importantly, and this is where Washington and Brussels need to be on the same sheet of music. We need economic sanctions against those nations who are continuing to deal with Vladimir Putin, and we ought to be confiscating Russian assets that are in Western banks that were confiscated 3 years ago when this whole thing started. So we have cards to play. I think Washington, and specifically President Trump, needs to start playing those cards. Last thought, I took heart when President Trump quite correctly said, Putin, you've let us down. And I think it goes beyond letting us down at this point. Putin is condescending to us, pushing us, insulting us, flying jets over NATO countries. It's time to make a stronger response.
Admiral James Stavridis, thanks so much for sharing your point of view.